see what else we can gather about that challenge to the Prime Minister, which of course we were warned about in recent days. I'll let you know what else we hope to be covering on The World at One, which is that there is a state banquet for the world's two most powerful men just finished in Beijing. At it, President Xi told President Trump that their countries should be partners, not rivals.
Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand.
President Xi's remarks live translated there. President Trump offered a return visit.
Thank you again, President Xi, for this beautiful welcome. And tonight it is my honor to extend an
live to Downing Street and live to breaking news, because we are just hearing that the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has resigned. I am looking at his letter as we come on air, and that, of course, is the major development that, of course, everyone here at Westminster has been waiting to actually hear, because the Health Secretary, over the last 24 hours, all those around him have been saying he is ready to resign and launch a leadership bid. That has just happened in the last few minutes. As I say, his letter to the Prime Minister, he starts by saying the results are in. I am pleased to report I have delivered against the ambitious targets you have set for me when you made me Secretary for Health and Social Care. He goes through the figures in the health service that were released earlier, with a fall in waiting lists. The only question that matters in government is whether we have our successors a better situation than we inherited. He then continues to go through this, and he then, towards the tail of the letter, says, these are all good reasons for me to remain in post, but as you know from our conversation earlier this week, you may remember that he went into Downing Street, had that 17-minute meeting. He says, having lost confidence in your leadership, I have concluded that it will be dishonourable and unprincipled to stay in post. Last week's election results were unprecedented, both in terms of the scale of the defeat and the consequences of that failure. For the first time in our country's history, nationalists are in power in every corner of the United Kingdom, including a dangerous English nationalism represented by Nigel Farage and Reform UK. This represents both an existential threat to the ideals that have made this country great. Progressives across the country understand this threat and our responsibility to confront it, but they are increasingly losing faith that the Labour Party is capable of rising to that historic responsibility of defeating racism and offering hope that Britain's best days lie ahead through social democracy. So just a chunk of that letter from Wes Streeting. There, of course, was the then Health Secretary during the debate after the King's speech yesterday, avoiding the questions of his Conservative counterpart. But there, of course, Wes Streeting with the Prime Minister. And, of course, in that letter, doing a lot to talk about the successes in the health service under his brief, but concluding that it would be wrong for him, he says, to go on, given the doubts he has voiced about the leadership of Keir Starmer. Throughout the morning, throughout yesterday, of course, so much attention about, did Wes Streeting have the numbers? His camp continuing to insist he did. 81, of course, is the number of MPs that challenger would need to have in place. So that appears to be the case. Obviously, we continue to monitor that part of the situation, the equation, the rules, the process, all of that. But this is the major development, because Wes Streeting's resignation will trigger a leadership contest. And then, of course, what does that trigger? Does that trigger other contenders to come into a contest? Angela Rayner, that news from HMRC earlier that she made public in that interview to the Guardian newspaper and ITV News, that there was no wrongdoing. She has paid back £40,000, but no fine. So does that mean her way is cleared in terms of pitching her hat into the ring? Or does she decide not to go into this contest. She, of course, as we were describing earlier, comes from the part of the party, the soft left, that would potentially back Andy Burnham. So she will be watching really closely what the Mayor of Manchester does. Of course, he has his own dilemma about not being at Westminster, not being able to stand. Can he find a constituency that enables him to fight a by-election, to get back into the race? And would that impact Angela Rayner's decision? Ed Miliband, another person that's been much talked about in the last few days, potentially also filling that gap in a leadership contest to take on Wes Streeting. Now, as we were telling you earlier, Wes Streeting seemed to be to the right of the party, and that perhaps means that some of the party, both at Westminster, the wider Labour Party, would be looking for an Angela Rayner or an Ed Miliband or an Andy Burnham to fight in a contest. What happens to Keir Starmer once a contest is triggered? He has vowed to fight on, has made that absolutely clear. Number 10 only saying the same thing earlier today. But if there are a number of contenders, does he continue with that stance, or does he look at the political backdrop and reconsider? All of those things now being thrown into the pot now that the trigger has been pulled. And of course, Al Cowns, the Defence Minister, also being talked about. He wrote in the papers only the last couple of days what he viewed as the challenge faced by Labour in terms of going forward. And was that a tilt to the fact that he would fight any leadership contest? And then if you have multiple players, it is anyone's guess where this actually goes. It's been very interesting seeing some of the recent polling that the Labour Party or those close to it have been doing, just trying to gauge where the Labour membership